spoken a lot about climate and where the plant or seed originally comes from, and making sure that we start to grow it when the conditions in the UK or wherever you are as close to possible to the local conditions that it's used to. But one thing we haven't touched on is soil conditions. So this is in addition to climate. Plants around the world will adapt to their local growing conditions. So they might have adapted to cope with very wet soil. They might have adapted to cope with very dry soil. Equally, they might have adapted to cope with a high pH or a low pH. So fundamentally, you need to find out what pH level and what soil conditions you have in your garden before you start buying plants, particularly perennial plants. Perennial plants, because they're very long-lived, so they're going to need to put up with the conditions for the lifespan of the plant, and that can be a very long time in the case of peonies. Annuals are a lot easier, and they're a good one to start with because they're only around for a year. They tend to be quite tolerant of their soil conditions, but there are exceptions. For example, I cannot grow bells of Ireland in my garden. A huge bugbear for me. Local garden centres will try and sell you plants which are not suitable for the local conditions. So here for me, my local garden centre is awash with beautiful Camellia, which we can't grow. So number one, before you spend a single penny, I want you to buy a soil pH testing kit. To take soil from maybe 4 or 5 different places around the garden, just in case the one location has been affected by something like a fir tree being really close to them, and they can be quite acid. So you want different locations, and don't use tap water because tap water will affect the pH result. So you want to use rainwater or mineral water, distilled water, something like that. Once you've got your soil testing pH, that will let you know what plants will naturally thrive in your local soil conditions. You can also tell by just looking over the fence and seeing what's growing well in your neighbour's garden. If you can see beautiful camellia and rhododendron, then you can probably guess that you are in an acid location. If you're in an alkaline soil location like I am, and you really fancy growing a camellia, I would recommend that you grow it in a pot. Because yes, of course, you can add things to the soil to change the pH, but it will just change back. And it's an uphill battle. And frankly, there are so many plants in the world, it's not worth the fight. So if you want to grow a camellia, grow it in a pot. Don't use tap water, use rainwater. You've got to be really careful with it. And don't go mad and buy too many. I would really recommend, although it's so tempting, I would really recommend, at least to start with, buy plants that will thrive naturally in your soil conditions.